Cut that out. Okay. All right, I'm ready. Welcome to Chat in the Commons, where we will have untamed conversations about the state of being a woman in the world. I'm Natalie Blundell. I'm in the corporate world and also the founder of a non-profit women's support network.
And I'm Elle Kamahira. I'm a documentary producer and podcast host. When we first started talking about the subject of today's episode, which is being socialized female, obviously that's like a huge subject to take on, and I'm sure we'll only scratch the surface. But when we were putting kind of our notes and research together, we had very different reactions to it.
Well, the first question I asked when you brought it up as a topic was, what do you mean being socialized female? What does that mean?
Yeah.
And I think you said you're kidding, right?
Yeah, because honestly, like I have been aware, sort of hyper aware of my being a girl and that there were different rules for girls and boys. And I've been angry about it since I was like 7.
And I didn't. Yeah. I think I just grew up thinking this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
I learned by my family, my elders, my peers, and that's how boys are and this is how girls are. And I accepted that.
Yeah.
I didn't question it. It was just, that's it. Boys get these set of standards and rules, and girls, we rule by a different set of standards.
And you never felt like it's unfair that you get restricted this way or that way?
Only as I matured and got older.
Yeah.
As an adult, not as a child. Because remember, I was a tomboy. I wanted to be accepted by the boys. I wanted to be one of the boys.
Yeah, that's funny because I was a tomboy too, but I still was aware of like that they had permission and I didn't, in a sense. And that the demands on me, especially as I got older, demands on me were much greater, socially, to be kind of nice, polite, kind, patient, whereas I felt like all the boys around me had free reign and could be as quote unquote bad as they want to be.
Oh, I know, because you're talking to a Brit and and we specialize in being kind and nice and polite and manners.
I'll bear that in mind. That often means I will never think about this ever again. I just want to politely end this discussion. When we say, could do, that means I don't really want to do what you just suggested. For example, right, shall we start cooking? Could do, or we could get a takeaway. And when we say, sorry, I think you might, that's a soft, polite way of saying, you definitely did. Sorry, I think you might be sitting in my seat. So that means you're definitely sitting in my seat. I just don't want to sound rude.
There are just so many, many ways that we show our femininity in our lives. And one of the things that we want to talk about is smiling. Growing up in Sweden, we're not as particularly smiley people. Like, it's kind of the land of resting bitch face, it's totally not uncommon to like not smile when you like get a coffee from someone in the morning or like a waiter or whatever. There's no smiling necessarily, even in like service professions,
Wow.
and people just don't smile at each other. And I know there are other cultures who don't as well. But when I came here as a really young person, I was told every day, all day to smile.
Yes.
But in researching this episode, I actually looked into the science of smiling, like the evolutionary biology of it all.
And, interesting.
Yeah, so smiling is, for most species, most animals, baring teeth is an aggressive gesture.
Sure.
Except for in chimpanzees, our closest relatives, and humans. But there's a difference between like baring your teeth smiling and baring your teeth aggressing, obviously. But there are also 2 types of smiles. One smile is a genuine smile, and that's when the muscles around your eyes are used. So you're smiling with your eyes as well as your mouth.
Yeah.
But then there's a fake smile when you don't use your eye muscles to smile. And all of this is involuntary, of course, but smiling can also be two different things in humans and primates as well, is that smiling can be a sign of cooperation and friendliness and openness and kind of like, I'm a friend, I'm not a threat. But it can also, and is also, a sign of submission to basically signal your second-class status or like signal your lower status, and to say like an ingratiating smile where you're like, oh, I'm not a threat, I promise, I'm good.
Sure.
You don't have to aggress against me because I'll be submissive to you.
Yeah, I do that. Like if I'm out on a walk and there's a man approaching me or even another woman, if we make eye contact, I do smile just to acknowledge, like, you're good. You're all good.
Yeah.
I'm no threat. I'm your friend.
So when men tell you, and every woman listening knows this, when men tell you to smile, or kind of admonish you to smile, to my mind, that is to say, signal your submission. It might be signal your friendliness, signal your cooperation, but it all kind of means the same thing because you are commanding someone, you're pressuring someone socially, and even saying it, smile towards me, signal your submission.
I just had a flashback to just walking in Manhattan, and you've got the construction workers doing the catcalling or just trying to engage and speak with you, and how many times they would say, smile, sweetie, or something like that.
Such a universal experience for women. And, men don't tell other men to smile. Never. Smiling is just one of the behaviors that women signal our lack of aggressiveness, our non-threat status, our non-assertive, accommodating femininity. And, I think the tolerance for female aggression or aggressiveness is really, really low. Whether you're in Sweden or America or Britain, the long, long, long tradition of policing women's aggressiveness, whether it's loud voices or crass language or physical aggression or being forceful in any way, it's just not socially accepted.
No, not at all. And they, I really hate the term, the K word, the Karen.
Oh, yeah.
That is so derogatory. So if you do speak up as a woman or look slightly aggressive or complain, there's videos all over TikTok. You're called a Karen. Maybe they're not being feminine enough or smiling enough.
Yeah, and I think it's usually middle-aged white women.
Sure.
And, what gets thrown in their faces is their relative privilege. And I'm not saying there aren't situations where white women of privilege especially aren't like overstepping bounds. The point is that there's a definite prejudice against women speaking out in a public way at all.
So other than smiling, what other social conditioning did we have as young girls?
Well, one thing I think is really funny is that we soften our voice. And in the English language, there is a phenomena called the sexy baby voice.
Oh, right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, exactly know what you're talking about.
And I read an article called Why Some Grown Women Sound Like Girls in Psychology Today, written by Deborah Grayson Regal. And she talks about why, first of all, the phenomena. And so the phenomena is basically, and I think the term was coined by Lake Bell, who did a documentary about voiceover work called In a World. It was called In a World. So she popularized the term in 2013 with that
Baby
film.
voice. You're saying baby voice.
Sexy baby voice. And
sexy baby
sexy
voice.
baby voice. And basically it's this. It's talking like really soft, like a baby, but you're also a woman, so you're like talking soft like a girl. That's the sexy
It sounds
baby
so
voice.
contrived. Like it's really, you would have to really force your voice into that tone and pitch.
That's right, but I hear this voice all the time.
I agree.
In media, I have noticed this sexy baby voice all over the place. It's super common.
But you were saying sometimes that you actually lower your voice because if you, I thought this was interesting on your tapes.
Yeah.
If people lower their voice, it does make them sound more authoritative, more credible.
I mean, that's right. That's up for discussion and for argument. But I find that I do lower my voice a bit when I want, in this setting, certainly, right? I want you to take me seriously. I want you to listen to my words. I want to wield some kind of authority, right? And so I do find myself leaning a little bit heavier on that.
As opposed to the sexy baby voice, which I find really
I knew it
irritating
would
for a
come
lot
up.
of people.
I knew it would come up.
What's the sexy baby voice like?
Look, all I'll say is, it's something that I really am proud of, and it's not. It doesn't evoke that you're less than or you're like not smart.
Yeah.
But it is up talk and it's fry and it's pitch.
It's fine.
No doubt.
What's the meaning of it? Is it just so that it's even more submissive?
So here's what she says in her article. It's to minimize power. Women at work will struggle with authority they have earned in both their relationships with men and with other women. By speaking like a girl, they divest themselves of one of the most outward signs of power, a commanding presence, in an attempt to level the playing field. So they kind of overcompensate by undercompensating. And so by using a tone of voice that goes up at the end and has a girl-like quality, mature quality, they leave people with the impression that she's just asking questions or making suggestion rather than deciding. She's underplaying her authority in a sense. So it makes other people less intimidated. But it also might be to stave off assertive input from others to make yourself sound younger and more vulnerable. So she's like unconsciously broadcasting that she won't defend herself, so don't be tough on her. She makes herself like small.
I can totally see that. And as you were explaining that, as I say in the intro, I'm in the corporate world. So I've been in the corporate world for 30 years. And I'm trying to picture the assertive women, including myself, or confident women, versus the women that are more submissive. And I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
It kind of goes to the whole issue of how many strategies women develop in order to survive in these different scenarios and thrive in different scenarios.
I don't know if it's even just survival or thrive. It's almost, I'm handing my power over to you. I give up the power. You're the bigger person in the room. You have the decision making. We're putting ourselves in that subservient role.
Yes, absolutely. But I think you can't forget that stepping into these rooms of power is very, very new compared to how long we've been oppressed.
Sure.
We're kind of like just making adjustments to be able to feel like we can take up space and can speak with authority and can know things and have the right to actually speak on things. Top of mind for most women is safety always. Even if you are in the boardroom like you described or in, corporate meetings, whatever, we're still, the safety part of our brain is always engaged if they're men in the room.
Sure. I have a tiny anecdotal story that happened this week, taking the train into Manhattan, and and the whole train car is completely quiet, except one man sitting in front of me on his phone, and he's talking at such a loud voice, it was disrupting the whole car. He was obviously a work call, seemed very important, and he was so loud. I was trying to work on something. So I said, shush, and he didn't respond at all.
There you go, being a Karen.
Exactly. That's funny you say that. I did the shh, and then a couple of people looked over at me like I was the one with the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went back to doing what they were doing. No one said anything, and he continued, and he was interrupting me. So I leant forward and I tapped him and I said, excuse me, can you be a little more quiet, please? I was super polite. And he said, shut the fuck up, and carried on talking in the loud voice. And a couple more people turned around to look at him then, and he carried on talking. And I sat back in my chair and I said, excuse me? And he carried on talking. And in that moment, I was doing a quick inventory. Am I safe? Is this man going to come after me? He was just a middle-aged man, about the same age as me. But the whole experience for me
shook you, I'm sure.
Yeah, it shook me because your adrenaline starts going. And women are experiencing this every day in small doses, quickly seeing if they're at risk.
Absolutely. And I think the absolute easiest thing for us to do when you make that calculation is to fawn. Like,
yes,
I go into fawn immediately to de-escalate.
Sure. Everything's fine. You know, it's all right. I just needed you to be more quiet. I could have had a whole conversation. Let's calm him down. Yeah. Oh, I'm a good fawner. I'm very good fawner.
And just kind of like lowering the temperature in the room. Like, I have so many, so many tricks. And, they talk about like hostage negotiations or whatever. Yeah. And that's kind of what it feels like. All of a sudden you're in a situation where, and you can find yourself in that so quickly, really anywhere. And I think most women are just ready always to go there. And about that intersection of our politeness that we're so conditioned to be and female fear. And so for us, I think we're always weighing our kind of like socially acceptable, polite behavior against our anxiety or our fear, real or imagined.
We learned that very, very young.
Very young, very young.
Yeah, I can definitely think back to being a very young girl and navigating and making sure I didn't trip off any of the men around me, boys or men.
Can you remember any like specific moments?
Oh, sure. Yeah. When my parents broke up and divorced and then continued to grow up in my grandparents' home, I never felt that threat from my grandfather, but I had an uncle that was there who was a teenager when I was young, the neighbor next door, the old man neighbor. So there was always predatory men that were in my life from very young and just learning to navigate that.
Yeah. And what you learn in a sense is that men equal danger. That becomes just kind of a reality.
Sure. And not the same for the women figures. Girls
Not at all.
Women.
Not at all. I have the same experience as you there, kind of like having a growing awareness of the unwanted attention on my body, but also other things that like I have this core memory of I was a wild tomboy, grew up outdoors. And I was climbing trees with my guy friends, and an older guy was below me in the tree, and I was in a dress, of course, like stupid. And and he looked up right at under my skirt and karate chopped me right in the muffin. And
No way.
yeah, and I think I fell out of the tree. It was so, but it wasn't just like shocking and painful and hurt me, but like I felt so betrayed. And I don't think that was like the moment I just realized, like, oh, we're vulnerable in a way that guys aren't.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
kind of hated discovering that.
Yeah. And also when, like, how old were you when you realized that you were sexual prey for men? It's young.
Oh, young. Like, yeah, 9, 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just one instance. It was many, many from
Sure.
all kinds of people, strangers, family members. Yeah.
Right. I was probably around 6, 7. Just a side note, both you and I grew up in the 70s, and there was the whole sexual revolution happening at the
True.
time.
Yeah.
So everyone was just like, hey, everything's fun and great.
Yeah.
And they didn't seem to have the boundaries that children should not be included in this equation here of your sexual revolution. But sadly, many were.
Yeah.
I lived in a pub in England,
Oh.
Southend-on-Sea in Essex, and
There's the accent.
and we lived above the pub. And my mum and her boyfriend were the landlady and the landlord of the pub, and we lived upstairs. But she thought it'd be really fun if she brought down her 2 daughters on a Friday or Saturday night when they were all totally drunk. All the patrons were drunk. It was after hours too, so we'd come down like 9 or 10 at night in our pretty dresses and our pretty hair, and we would play on the piano and we would sing on the mic stand. And but
wow.
there were lewd attempts.
Drunkards.
Oh, drunkards, like completely inappropriate. And she would try to whisk us away or try to protect us. But like, Mum, what were you thinking? Taking us down there? But that, I think that was the age I was really waking up like, whoa, this is not safe. This is not safe. I wasn't getting that from the women, but the sexual aggression and unwanted male attention, I didn't know what to do with it at that age.
This is probably like a decade before you would know what all of that was about. That's what's so crippling about this stuff, is that it happens much before your consciousness is ready to process it or perceive it.
Sure. And I do think over history, the girl's coming of age, that age of when she starts menstruation and her body develops, that's usually when she becomes prey. It can be sooner, earlier, but that's usually when it is. As they joke, oh, that's... Dads are like, oh, I'm going to get my shotgun. That's when I'm going to get my shotgun. Thanks. It's like the men have to then protect the women. And boys coming of age, and it's celebrated, the boys coming of age. It's rights and tradition and celebration.
While women, it's almost like you turn into a liability at that point. And a lot of cultures, and I don't think our cultures are exempt, women are become guardians of virtue in a sense, because boys, I mean, how many times have you heard boys will be boys, or boys are just like have this like large margin to be bad or unruly, and girls are taught to be, you know, virtuous and follow the rules and be good girls and behave in the acceptable ways, whereas boys get to be selfish and unrestricted.
That completely reminds me of a little passage written by Glennon Doyle in her book Untamed, which I'll read. I'll just set the tone real quick. So she has an older son who's like 17, and his friends are over. They're all watching a movie, and then she has 2 daughters. And the girls and her friend, a couple of their friends, are also over watching the movie, all in the same big room. And she stops seeing, Glennon stops seeing and just says, "Hey, is anyone hungry?" And all the boys immediately just don't even look up from the TV and they just go, yes. They all say yes. And then she writes this about what she witnessed with the young girls. The girls are silent at first. Then each girl diverts her eyes from the television screen and scans the faces of the other girls. Each looks to a friend's face to discover if she herself is hungry. Some kind of telepathy is happening among them. They are polling. They are researching. They are gathering consensus, permission, or denial. Somehow the collective silently appoints a spokesgirl. She looks away from the faces of her friends and looks over to me, and she smiles politely and says, "We're fine, thank you." The boys look inside themselves. The girls look outside themselves. We forgot how to know when we learned how to please. This is why we live hungry.
Wow, that gives me chills.
I learned. I was conditioned.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And in a sense, like other girls police girls. We police ourselves and we police our girl group, whatever it is.
Yes. And that doesn't end in girlhood or childhood.
Oh, no.
That's going on as full adults.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting that you brought up there was food in that too. We police ourselves. We are policed. We police other women about eating, not eating. That also like marked my childhood and coming of age a great deal. Not just keeping thin and, a number of years with eating disorders of either that extreme or this extreme, and all my girlfriends as well, either starving yourself or taking drugs or dieting, or so much of our coming of age years was distracted and poured into making our bodies into what the beauty standard was at the time. I shudder to think the amount of time and money and living energies that went into that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read a whole lot about dieting and what it does to both the psyche and physically and everything else, and worked on getting out of sort of the prison that is. And when you starve yourself, especially as a growing person, like through puberty, and I don't know any girls who have not.
Same.
Yeah. And when you starve yourself, you make your body weak and your brain slow, essentially, is what you do. Is that you're not getting enough calories to be active. So in a sense, you zap your energy so you don't have the energy to be active. And then all the variety of diets that your brain needs, like glucose and carbohydrates and all of the things that you're not supposed to eat, you don't feed your brain. So you slow down your brain's ability, not just to grow, but to function.
Now I'm understanding about being socialized female. Now it's all coming together. Because yes, the eating, all the stigma around that, and I've never been a thin girl or woman. I think of myself as bigger framed or bigger boned. So I love to eat. I'm not a big drinker. I've never smoked, didn't do drugs, but I love food. And whenever I'd go for dinner on a date or, with one of my partners, I'd order a lovely meal. I'd really enjoy it. And they'd go, "You've got a healthy appetite."
Oh, God.
Like, it wasn't negative, was it? It wasn't, but it was just, you could think of it as a positive thing that I have a healthy appetite, but it was said in a tone that made me feel
that way, believe me.
No, like, "Oh, you're getting seconds." It's like all of it.
But also, I got that from my mother and female relatives as well. Like my aunt used to tell me when I was like 11, 12, because I ate as much as my father. And she would say, soon you're not going to be able to eat like that. You're going to turn out 300 pounds. You can eat like that now, but that's not going to be for long.
And that sets neural pathways, that like foundational conditioning in your brain that stays with you for life. You hear that voice, even when that person's long out of your life or dies, you keep hearing that. It's very hard to undo those kind of messages and conditioning.
And each time you encounter something like that, mockery or mocking tone or someone pointing out or undermining or belittling you for that, every time you hear it after that, it re-triggers. And it's just like it's a never-ending reminder that people are looking at you, the amount you eat, what you look like, that you're not subscribing to the feminine ideal or that you're not reaching your feminine potential. Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to go back a little bit to the whole knowing your prey, understanding this intersection between like politeness and female fear. Because I think that politeness, it is so deeply conditioned in us, actually can get us in a whole lot of trouble when we do need to defend ourselves, because our instincts, like you mentioned in your Glenn Doyle writing, the fact that you look to social acceptance before you are able to know what you know. So there's so many layers of like second guessing yourself, and the politeness tyranny, if you will, is so deep. The defense specialist, Gavin de Becker, he wrote a book called The Gift of Fear.
Really great book.
So good. And he basically talks about this deep conditioning that women have about being polite. So when dangerous men or men who are at risk, or when you're in a situation where you're risk assessing, women are in a constant battle with their politeness. Polite meaning when a man approaches you, asks for directions or asks for help or approaches you in any way, our inclination, because of our conditioning, is to be polite and open and friendly and cooperative.
Of course. Exactly. That's what I do.
Yeah. And he basically says, whatever those instincts tell you to do to be polite, if you feel uncomfortable in any way, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Do the opposite of what the politeness tells you to do. And that's going to be the thing that keeps you safe. Listen to your fear intuition. Don't let it get overridden by your politeness conditioning.
This is what the culture teaches, which is that women have to be nice all the time. You have to engage. If I say something to you in public, you have to respond. You can't be a bitch. You can't be mean.
Yeah.
And the fact is that men at core are afraid that women will laugh at them. And women at core are afraid that men will kill them. And often believe that if you're not nice, you increase the likelihood of danger and risk, when in fact the exact opposite is true. It's when you're nice that you open up and give information, that you engage with someone you don't want to talk to. He or she doesn't want to let someone into the store. And for fear of being perceived as not nice, she opens the door and lets him in. And it ultimately leads to a rape. I have not heard of one case in my entire career where someone was raped or murdered because they weren't nice. In other words, that's not the thing that motivates rape and murder. But I've heard of many, many cases where someone was victimized because they were open to the continued conversation with someone they didn't feel good about talking to.
So important.
But of course, like, men just don't. Men don't think about this for a second. Like, it's just not part
oblivious.
of the complete oblivion. Yeah. And I mean, if you think about how we're conditioned to fawn or be polite and accommodating, like nowhere in no other situation is that as like important as when we're rejecting a man. And if you think about all of the times when you have rejected a man and the mental gymnastics that you go through and the behaviors, the tricking, the acting not afraid, all of the strategies that you run through in order to reject the man and not raise his rage or predatory instinct.
Oh my God, my whole life. We actually, as women, very skillful at that.
Yeah.
With our demeanor, with our words, with our body language, all of it, to let them down easy, to let them know that it's about not causing them pain. I think it is because we're scared of the pain will trigger the anger or the violence or the
hurt
backlash.
Pride or the hurt entitlement.
Yeah. We don't want to offend them. We want to blame ourselves. We'll often phrase things in a way, it's not you, it's just where I'm at.
Yeah.
This is just, you're great. You are great. It's me.
Right. It's me. It's me. It's not you. It's me.
Yeah.
And best case scenario is perhaps to navigate the situation in a way that they walk away feeling like they rejected you.
Oh, that's definitely a win situation. And we are clever to be able to present it in that way. So it makes them, what we're doing there is actually giving the man back the control. We're not, even though we're making the decision, we're acting as if they are making the decision.
I call it the female fear. I don't remember a time when I haven't felt this particular kind of fear. It has a warping effect of your whole. It just shapes your entire psyche and your understanding of the world. Rebecca Solnit talks about men as a collective have trained women to be paralyzed by this female fear.
But as an adult, I've been threatened and stalked and harassed and menaced and had rape attempts and things. But I wanted to say that, as I say in the book, it gets you even if it doesn't get you. You have to think every day of your life as a young woman, as a girl and a young woman. If I wear this, what will happen? If I go out now, what will happen? I'm almost 60 and I'm still on guard. I don't get targeted much now, but what happened to me as a young woman felt in a way like what men as a collective are doing is training women not to expect to be free and equal and confident. It's like a hazing, right? And that hits girls often when they're prepubescent and goes into your 20s, and it just tells you this is not your world, this is not your street, this is not your city, this is not your adventure, and then the movies tell you you are not and the books, you are not the protagonist. You're, the Madonna or the whore, the helpmeet or the minor character, and so you just get so intensely instructed. And of course, feminism is a project to unpack all that and find alternatives.
She's the author that wrote the book in 2014, Men Explain Things to Me.
Oh, yeah.
Which I love. In fact, let me read a passage here from the book. So men explain things to me and other women, whether or not they know what they're talking about. Every woman knows what I'm talking about. It's the presumption that makes it hard at times for any woman in any field, that keeps women from speaking up and from being heard when they dare, that crushes young women into silence by indicating, the way harassment on the street does, that this is not their world. It trains us in self-doubt and self-limitation, just as it exercises men's unsupported overconfidence.
Yeah, which brings us to mansplaining. And
mansplaining.
She writes so beautifully about that in that whole book. She opens with this anecdote of going to a party where she runs into a man whom she calls Mr. Important. And they're talking about books, and she's a published author at this time. And he goes on about the subject of her latest book and talking about her latest book, not understanding and not knowing that he's talking about her book.
Right.
And so
right.
her friend tries to interrupt the conversation and let him know that he's explaining this book to the author who wrote the book.
Oh my
and,
God.
And she just can't get a word in edgewise.
Yep.
He did get it at the end of the conversation and was really kind of mortified. But, that's kind of what inspired that book. And
I love it.
just tells you everything.
I think she was thought to be the coining the term mansplaining, but it wasn't. That was actually the word, the New York Times word of the year in 2010.
Oh, cool.
Her book came out in 2014. But it really is about men always explaining everything, that they present themselves as the wisdom keepers. They assume this level of expertise and that you don't have any expertise on whatever the topic is. And they talk with that kind of authority.
Yeah. Again, like with other things, it's too many occasions in your life where you have experienced that to the point where it's just like the background.
Yeah, we could spend the next 2 hours giving examples of every time we experience that in our life.
Whether it's like husbands or brother-in-laws or father-in-laws or colleagues or whatever. Like I have had men instruct me at the gym how to swim, driving, anything in tech, explain history to me. I have had men take, actually an ex of mine had a habit of taking household like tools, like screwdrivers or hammers, whatever, just like straight out of my hand. He was so like terrified to see me with a tool that he would just instinctively just kind of, no, I'll do that, honey. Don't.
Like you have no idea what you're doing. That's my job. And I know how to use that tool because I used it as a little boy.
Right, because I'm a man.
It's unreal. Actually, I want a call to action right now to our listeners. It would be super fun to give us examples. Yeah, send us a message on a funny thing that a man mansplained to you.
We'll read them on an episode in the future.
Sure. But if you think about it, I mean, the conditioning, we've been talking about conditioning of girls, but boys were conditioned in a different way. So it's understandable why grown men do the mansplaining. And it actually makes me think of Joseph Campbell. So he was a US mythologist who coined the term the hero's journey in 1949. So I'm going to just kind of give you an overview of the hero's journey. And this is really in every hero's journey is really behind every movie, book, every myth. It's a narrative template for a protagonist who leaves the village and he embarks on an adventure and a journey.
It's a he.
It's a he. He learns something of value. Exactly. He learns something of value that helps him achieve victory or defeat the enemy. And then he returns home a changed man. So it's a cycle and a pattern. You can think of like Luke Skywalker, every single Greek myth, every historical figure.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't really drop in a woman to the hero's journey because she has a whole other structure and template.
We're not allowed to be heroes.
No. And they try in movie culture and video games. And so in 1988, Maureen Murdoch, she wrote a book called The Heroine's Journey, 40 years after the hero's journey was coined. And this is how it goes for women, the heroine. It begins with her separating from her family or her village. She's separated. She doesn't leave. She's separated. And then the whole journey becomes about her goal to reunite with something or someone who was taken from her. Mm. But she has to build this whole little empowered network of companions to aid her along the way. She can't do it alone. Like the hero, she has to have this group of people that are rooting for her. It's about her embracing her masculine energy and feeling empowered before returning home and being back into the feminine.
So interesting. And I mean, the thing is, like, you can try to break the archetype, like in modern movies and so on. But
Sure.
if it doesn't resonate in the culture, which is so deeply rooted, like, then it just doesn't resonate.
Yeah, good examples of the heroine's journey is Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, yes.
She got whisked up, taken away, and she had to, she was separated, but the goal was to get back, and she had to rally her companions.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Katniss in Hunger Games. These are the
Oh,
heroine's
yes.
journey.
Yes,
It's
yes.
different.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we're growing up with. These are very, very old guidelines.
Archetypal.
Archetype. Mm-hmm.
Aside from that also is that girls, I think, were taught that we need protection and that boys grow up to want to be heroes by protecting women when men go to war or to defend what they're defending is women.
Sure.
And Cynthia Enloe is a sociologist, cultural historian who talks a lot about women and militarization. And I interviewed her a couple of years back. She talks about this idea, and I'm going to quote, an entire culture is organized around women showing their femininity. And you have to show your femininity because otherwise you're not a respectable woman. To show your appropriate femininity, you have to accept that you are the protected, not the protectors, and you have to be grateful to the manly men who protect you. And you are the protected because you don't know how the world works. And that is also, aside from the archetypal stories, the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, you also have that prohibition against women to also be protectors and defenders.
And we just had Memorial Day here in the US a couple of weeks ago, where we honor the servicemen and servicewomen and the war heroes. And Sonora Ja,
love her.
Yes, and there's a great little clip that she spoke about. What if women's hero stories were shared in ways that the men share about their hero stories from wartime?
Even when we talk about telling our stories of survival, right? And whether we can tell them as, you write that too, can we tell them as stories of heroism, right? Surviving violence, surviving rape, surviving walking down the street on any given day and coming back home. What if we were sitting around, say, a Thanksgiving table and telling our stories of surviving rape or surviving having been raped or assaulted the way men tell war stories, because they can be wounded in war. They can be, and in fact, if they are wounded in war, the more wounded, the better the story. Why
and medals and all that, and parades and all that crap?
Exactly. And we can't even tell our stories about being raped, So imagine if grandma suddenly started saying, oh, about that second time when I was sexually assaulted. Come on, gather around, children. And I know it sounds outlandish and we'll probably lose a few viewers here or participants, but it only sounds outlandish because we've made it that way, because we've made it about shame on women. We've made it about, women's bodies are not to be discussed. It's not polite. Whereas men's bodies going to war and being maimed or being harmed and coming back with bullet wounds is fair game. We can talk about that.
That's almost brutal to think about.
It is. But if we had a paradigm shift that we could start having conversations as easily as that at Thanksgiving, it sounds so outlandish now, but why aren't we? Why is it just the men's heroic stories of their wars? Women go through their own wars.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with, it's a shameful fact, isn't it? That, men victimize women in this way so much.
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, rape and raping reveals something about men that we just don't want to talk about. And rape, of course, is a part of war. also.
Yeah.
They may come home to their women at home. They may have raped the women from the cultures where they waged war.
They definitely did.
Yeah.
Raping and pillaging. So all this conditioning as young girls, there's always an alternative. I know from being raised primarily by a single mother, the effect that had on me and how it affected my parenting, raising my girls as single mother that I was.
We both have experienced single motherhood, and I think we both are very aware that being a single parent gives you an opportunity to rewrite the narrative and to model the things for your daughters that you can't if you have a man in the house,
100%. My mother taught me, like, having her be that head of household and seeing her strength and determination and resilience.
Mm-hmm.
I learned so many things as a young girl that it made me then in turn say, no, I don't need a guy to do that. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can be that. I can be who I want. And I've passed that on to my girls too,
Mm-hmm.
without having them be dependent on a father figure.
We have both raised our girls to value independence and self-sufficiency a great deal.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
That is
Right.
a beautiful thing. And it's same with me. Like, I learned that from my mother as well. Not only did she liberate herself from my dad, who really was a tyrant in our home, and kind of the lesson to me was that if you are being tyrannized, if you are being disrespected in your home, or if you are not having the life you want because you have a man in the house, you can liberate yourself. You can walk out of that marriage and start your life over. She taught me that.
Me too. It's such an important lesson that you're not stuck and cornered.
You're not stuck. Yeah.
Right. The way our ancestors, they would that was it. They would give up all their hopes and dreams and just succumb to their situation.
Exactly. She also taught me that, like, there was nothing she could do. We always drove Citroens, and it's a complicated car because it has an hydraulic system, so you can actually take it up and down over like snow or terrain.
Oh, wow.
And she had a toolbox in the back of that car, and there was nothing that she could not fix on the side of the road in that car.
Amazing.
She also did like other crazy things, like she was a deep sea diver. And
wow.
Yeah, and an ocean swimmer. She's the most fearless person I've ever known. And so she imbued in us like that, a certain kind of like adventurous fearlessness that I don't think I would have gotten had she not left my father.
Right, because there's an energy and there's a kind of natural order of power in
That's
that
right.
nuclear family as such.
That's exactly right, because before the divorce, she was a very obedient, subservient wife.
You must have seen a big difference of her
Huge.
Kind of coming out her shell after they broke up. Yeah.
It was life-shaping for sure.
For my daughters, I have 3 daughters and a son. I'd been a Girl Scout troop leader, and so you have to teach, and get the badges and teach them a lesson and stuff like that. So one of my daughters, I had the troop over my house, and I said, we're going to learn, how to take care of the house. And they were like, oh, good, cooking and cleaning? No, we're going to fix a toilet. And they were like, ew. So I dismantled a whole toilet and put my hand in the tank and
Love
everything
that.
to show them, like, there's nothing to be afraid of, girls. Nothing to be afraid of. You put your hand in. This is how you fix it. The chain comes off. Let's understand how the toilet works.
Love that.
These are important lessons. You don't call a plumber or call your husband. You just do it yourself.
Yeah, I've been an eyewitness to your capacity as a homeowner, so I know.
Thank you very much. I think before we wrap this up, I want to go to, what's the countermeasure to this deeply ingrained conditioning of being female. And for me, that really is getting back in touch with what I believe is the greatest gift we have as women, which is our intuition.
Amen. Amen to that.
And we are taught from a very early age not to trust ourselves, not to trust our judgment, our thoughts. So when we do have this gut instinct or this deep knowing or a feeling that something's right for us or wrong for us, or what we want to eat or not eat, or where we want to go to college or not, we know, we have a knowing. And through society, we've been denied that experience and that gift.
Kind of our connection to ourselves.
Yeah, and so as adult women, we get to now rebuild that muscle, reconnect to that inner knowing in whatever way we can.
And to be secure in knowing what we know. And that we don't need to look for agreement or look for other people, especially men, affirming whether what we're thinking or what we know is right. We have extraordinary abilities to know just by being women.
I want to go back for a minute to Glennon Doyle and read you something from her book, Untamed, about being still. If I am willing to sit in the stillness with myself, I always know what to do, that the answers are never out there. The more I live in my own knowing, the more my life becomes my own, and the less afraid I become. I trust that the knowing will go with me wherever I go, nudging me towards the next thing, one thing at a time, guiding me all the way home.
Love that. Love that so much.
It's a great reminder.
All right. Well, that wraps up our show.
All right.
See you on the next one.
When I was a little girl, I wished I was a boy. I tagged along behind the gang and wore me corduroys. Everybody said I only did it to annoy, but I was gonna be an engineer. Mama told me, can't you be a lady? Your duty is to make me the mother of a pearl. Wait until you're older, dear, and maybe you'll be glad that you're a girl. A dainty as a dress.
Thank you for listening to Chat in the Commons. We would love to hear from you about anything we talked about on this episode. You can reach us via our social media or on our website, chatinthecommons.com. You can also find links to all the resources mentioned in the episode in the show notes below.
If you like what we're doing here, please share with all your friends. And the best way to support our work is to give us a 5-star rating and positive review on your podcast app.
Chat in the Commons is produced by me, Elle Kamihira, and Natalie Blundell. Audio engineering by Jason Sheasley at Abridged Audio. Artwork by Rita Dominguez. Music by Mushumi.